On today's show, we will open with a story from Virginia Tech's lacrosse team that made national headlines. We will examine Longwood University's new men's basketball head coaching hire, Griff Aldrich. And we have an interview with Justin Cage from Inside the ACC.com where we will discuss Virginia Tech's chances of getting the running back recruit prospect Devin Ford. And that all starts right now.
Running out of time, finally throws, and it is gone! Touchdown, Tyrell Roberts!
From 46 yards, Racky to win it. On the way, Ethan Racky, and he got it! James Madison survives!
Snap good, spot good.
Oh, it's blocked! Liberty wins it! Liberty blocked it! Oh my goodness! The Flames have done it!
360 in the contract, never that. I just take the contact.
This is Virginia Sports Report, brought to you out of the beautiful city of Roanoke, Virginia. Thank you for joining us on what is actually a beautiful Wednesday evening. It is so weird being in Roanoke. There is still snow on the mountains from a snowstorm we got over the weekend, yet it's 70 degrees here. I've never seen anything like it, but it is good to have you with us on this Wednesday. Chris Mason, back with us tonight. Chris, how are you this evening?
I'm doing great, CJ. Thank you.
Good. That is good to hear. So we're going to lead off today's show with a story that, went to sleep a couple nights ago, thinking about the podcast, trying to plan everything, and did not know this was going to be a story. But it has gained national attention, so we're going to discuss it. So Saturday night, the Virginia Tech women's lacrosse team, by the way, let's make a note here. This is the first time in the history of this podcast we've ever discussed women's lacrosse. It hopefully will be the last time. But Saturday night, Virginia Tech women's lacrosse team, which is one of the best lacrosse teams right now in the country, ranked in the top 20. They're very, very good. Went and played Elon and beat Elon. So on the drive home from that game on the team bus, the Virginia Tech women's lacrosse team is seen singing a song that features the N-word. Now, I went and looked at this song, and this song is written by an artist called Little Dicky. Don't know who that is. He's apparently a Caucasian rapper. And joining him in the song is Chris Brown. Most of you guys know who he is, an African-American rapper. The song is called Freaky Friday. And I went and looked at the lyrics of the song. And the point of the song is essentially, the concept of Freaky Friday. They switch places. And so Little Dicky, the Caucasian rapper, essentially is living the life of an African American, and Chris Brown, the African American, is living the life of a Caucasian for a day. And so the song kind of goes about, how that would look. So it does feature the N-word, and these Virginia Tech players were singing it on the bus. Now, yesterday afternoon, a Deadspin publishes an article titled "Video Shows Virginia Tech Women's Lacrosse Team Chanting the N-Word. Coach Calls It Teachable Moment." Now, before I even dive into this really, let's kind of discuss what Deadspin is. Now, one of the big stories over the past, 5 or 6 years is how political ESPN has been. Well, Deadspin was founded about 8 years ago, and the moment they were founded, the first thing Deadspin did was went right after ESPN and did so in a political manner. You could look at ESPN and the political landscape that they have now shifted to and blame all of that on Deadspin kind of forcing their hand at that. That is what Deadspin has become. It is a media website that publishes clickbait to try and track you in and get you all upset. And they're one of these fake news outlets where people are just going to read the headlines and have a reaction and scroll past. Now, I actually looked into the story, and it is Virginia Tech players singing along to a song that features the N-word, not simply chanting the N-word, where the coach calls it a teachable moment. So it's completely different. Now, why are we talking about this story? Well, it gained national attention, but the other problem with this story is now people have come out and said that Virginia Tech should suspend the lacrosse team, and the NCAA should prevent Virginia Tech from having any postseason play in the lacrosse tournament. Now, I look at this story, Chris, and I think that is absolutely ludicrous. College kids are notorious for one thing, and I don't care if you're a freshman, senior in college kids are notorious for one thing. That's doing dumb stuff. And I'm not talking about like dumb illegal stuff or like racially dumb stuff. I'm just talking about saying dumb things. Saying things that are a little bit off. This is kind of like the story of a college kid. So I don't necessarily think it's a good idea to be videotaping you and your team singing a song that contains the N-word on your bus ride back to campus. But if the Virginia Tech lacrosse team is getting suspended for this, I would be willing to bet my next paycheck that we could go find stories or we could go find something about each and every college student ever just as bad as this. To me, this is just simply Deadspin coming out and using a weird, awkward moment where they're singing a song with the N-word and they're using it as leverage for an article that generates a lot of clicks.
Yeah, I agree with that. Deadspin, who knows what they're doing publishing this, but I think the coach is right. It's a teachable moment, and the lesson here is a couple of things. Number one, you represent your university. Mm-hmm. You shouldn't be singing these songs with these words, but it's college, right? These girls, this is happening. It's happening in every college dorm room and frat house and sorority house and sports buses and things like that. And they're celebrating they won the game. I don't hold nothing against that.
In the song, too, let's think about it. Okay, so what would be wrong with the N-word? Well, what would be wrong with the N-word would be that it's a racially charged slur and it would be offensive. But the point of the song, not that I'm into hip-hop or rap or anything like that, the point of the song, though, is really to try and, it's an anti-racism song, right? It's about, the struggles an African American goes through that a white person may not necessarily be able to relate to.
Sure.
So,
I haven't heard the song, but
if you go and look at the lyrics of the song, it's kind of got a positive message to it. But here we're saying this song is bad because it contains the N-word and people are singing to it. I've never really understood why we take things that are anti-racist and because it has a word in it, we deem it racist, and so now it's no longer okay. At some point you have to be able to have a discussion about these things to get past them. Yeah. So I know that part of it doesn't really relate to Virginia sports, but the fact that this is a good song, technically a politically correct song, and people are out protesting and petitioning that the NCAA should suspend the Virginia Tech lacrosse team, that to me is absolutely ludicrous.
Yeah, just know that there's cell phones and video out there everywhere, and you're constantly being watched. If you're a athlete on a university team, I don't care if it's women's lacrosse or men's football, you're going to get scrutinized and judged differently than the average student would be, and people can videotape you from anywhere.
Yeah. No, they definitely can, and it's definitely something to keep in mind. But, Deadspin, by the way, this website, people are freaking out about this. Deadspin is a website that's about to file bankruptcy if you go and look at them. They're publishing these types of articles daily, and the reason is because they're trying to generate clicks. And one of the things you have to understand about the media is the media exists, whether it's Fox News, CNN, ESPN, don't care. The media exists to make money. And they make money by going to sponsors and telling them, hey, this is what we've done. This is how many people are watching our stuff. This is why you should sponsor on our channel, on our network, on our website, on whatever. And that's how they're going to make their money. So Deadspin makes their money by producing clickbait articles, getting you all up in arms about something, and then getting people to click on it. Let's move over to the next story. And this is a very, very good one. So Longwood University just had a terrible basketball season. They fired their coach, and they have now hired a new coach, Griff Aldrich. Now, I looked at this hire, Chris. I think this is a fantastic hire. And I went and wrote about this on the website. You can go to virginiasportsreport.com. So Longwood has been a Division I team for the past 10 years. They have a record of 130 and 312. That is an awful record. People don't realize in college basketball, you get the opportunity to cater a ton of your home schedule. College football, it's not as much like that. In college basketball, you have a ton of flexibility with your schedule. You can schedule tournaments. You can bring in just about anybody you want to your home court. You can schedule wins if you need to. And the sport is built for you to be able to win at least 10 to 15 games a year. They are 130 and 312, and only 7 times have they won more than 10 games in a season. It's absolutely awful considering the fact that they've been Division I since 2004. Now, Griff Aldrich, you may not necessarily know that name. So let me give you some backstory to who he is. He spent 16 years in the private sector as a CEO, then went and was hired as a recruiting coordinator at UMBC. Some of you are like, wow, that name rings a bell. Why? UMBC beat UVA in the NCAA tournament and didn't just beat UVA, they beat them by 20 points as a 16 seed. I may never get tired of saying that. He was on that staff. Here's what I love about this hire for Longwood. And I've said this before, but like coaching, the head coach of any college team is not necessarily about X's and O's. Because anybody can do X's and O's. A college team, you're competing with 320 some other Division I schools. Your first job, if you're not a big-time program like Duke or Kentucky, your first job is branding and building a business. And at Longwood, where you're in tiny Farmville and there's nothing in that town, and believe me, there's not, you have a job to build a brand. He was a former CEO. He understands how to do that. The X's and O's, you can hand that off to assistants. I need somebody that can build a brand and recruit. He can do that. Here's the other thing I like. UMBC has a history. We pointed this out last week on the podcast. They have a history of succeeding against the pack line defense. Let's throw up the warning button for Liberty University, who runs a pack line defense. Longwood just went and hired a guy who's an expert at succeeding against the pack line defense and has a plan for it. Now, that's not going to fly against every Big South team, but if you asked any Longwood fan who their biggest rival is, most of them would probably tell you Liberty. So I'm not going to say it's a bad thing that the Lancers just went and hired a guy who specializes in beating their rival. That to me is a great hire. And then lastly, Griff Aldrich played at Hampton-Sydney. He coached at UMBC. He is the definition of an underdog. It is in his DNA. The thing I like about this so much better than if they went and hired, let's say they went and hired an assistant from Virginia Tech, is because an assistant at Virginia Tech has seen the Virginia Tech facilities. He's seen how much they're pouring into athletics. He's seen all of that. Griff Aldrich hasn't. He can embrace the fact that Longwood is a small school, that there's not many students there, that it's in the middle of nowhere. He's from Hampton-Sydney. He knows the area, knows high school recruiting in this state. I think he can be pretty successful at Longwood. Now, I'm not saying he's going to take Longwood to the NCAA tournament. I'm not saying you're going to have multiple 20-win seasons with him, but he can at least make Longwood something relative in the Big South, something to be talked about. Chris, I love the hire of Griff Aldrich going to Longwood.
You know what I'm excited about? He's going to be on our podcast next week.
He is. No, this is very exciting. So we had Mike Jones on last week, who was fantastic. And then next week we were going to bring on Griff Aldrich to our podcast. That is confirmed, by the way. He will be on at 7:15, so approximately 1 week from this moment right now, we will be bringing on Griff Aldrich. And it's going to be exciting. Chris, I got to say something, though. He might be coming after me a little bit. I kind of fired up some Longwood fans this week. In my article, I posted that Farmville, where Longwood is located, is essentially like defined as the gas station stop on your way to Richmond. And Longwood fans got all upset about that. Longwood fans, I'm sorry for pointing out the obvious that Farmville is small. I didn't know that you guys wanted to keep that a secret. I think it's pretty well known that anybody who has heard of Farmville, Virginia, knows it's small. Most people hear Farmville and they think of the Facebook game that got popular a couple of years ago. But Griff may be coming after me for that a little bit. So he will be on next week. We're going to take a break. On the other side of this break, we have Justin Cates from Inside the ACC joining the podcast. I'm very excited about it. We're going to talk Virginia Tech hoops, UVA hoops. We're going to talk about some football coming up. It's March and I'm talking about football. You got that. All right, we will be right back. This is Virginia Sports Report.
There's nothing left to say. I know where I'm going. We're starting here today. And you know that right. You know that's right. You know that's right.
little, I didn't talk for a long time. I liked things to always be the same. Anything new or different would scare and upset me. I was very sensitive to lights and sounds. It was almost like I had bigger eyes and ears than everyone else. So I built secret hiding places where nothing could get in. I didn't like looking people in the eye. It made me feel uncomfortable. I'd throw big tantrums over little things like when my socks didn't match. Sometimes I'd do the same things over and over. Until one day, I found out I had autism. My family got me help. Slowly, I learned how to live with it better.
You can see signs of autism in children as young as 18 months. Early intervention can make a lifetime of difference. Learn the signs at autismspeaks.org/signs. Brought to you by Autism Speaks and the Ad Council.
Listen, if you're a Virginia Tech fan, if you're a UVA fan, I encourage all of you to always go to InsideTheACC.com, along with VirginiaSportsReport.com. Inside the ACC does a great job with all of their articles. And by the way, it's a great time to be going to look at that stuff because, like, your opponents, Pittsburgh, to name one, and Louisville, to name another, have gone out and made big splash hires this week in basketball. It is a very exciting time to be a fan of the ACC. Joining me now is the main editor over at Inside the ACC, Justin Cates. Justin, how are you this evening?
I'm good, CJ. Good to be with you.
Yeah, good to have you here. So, listen, let's talk about this Virginia Tech story. I know you guys haven't really written much about this, and it's probably going to die down in a couple of days, but Virginia Tech women's lacrosse story, out singing on a bus, a song that contained the N-word. Deadspin publishes an article about it. It gets national attention. What's your reaction to this? Because I got to tell you, I think this is one of the most crazy things I've ever seen, that a media site is trying to play the racism card on a group of girls that were just really singing a good song.
Well, you know, when you end up on Deadspin, it's usually one of two things. You either did something really impressive or something really questionable. It generally seems to be the case. You know, this is definitely a difficult situation. For one thing, the team has actually been having a great season, possibly
they're ranked
the best season in Virginia Tech lacrosse history, which is something that I'm sure a lot of people aren't aware of, and this will unfortunately be the first thing that they hear about the team. You know, I think if there's a big lesson to take away from it, it's that you just have to be smart about your social media. And there are some things that, you know, maybe in the privacy of your own home are perfectly okay, but then it's just an objectively bad idea to put it on the internet.
Yeah. No, that's definitely true. You know, once you put something out on the internet, it's kind of out there forever.
Yeah, and, you know, people are free to take it as they wish at that point. So, you know, I think head coach John Sung had a statement that he mentioned that hopefully it could be a teachable moment, and I think there are certainly a lot of lessons that can be learned from all athletes, but just people in general. That you got to really be smart about what you put on the internet sometimes, especially when it comes to social media. Yeah,
no, I completely agree. All right, let's talk Virginia Tech UVA basketball. Great seasons for both, but obviously not ending the way any of us really thought they would. You know, UVA comes in, look, number 1 overall seed. They get ousted by UMBC. Here's kind of been the story over the past couple of weeks, though. UMBC didn't just beat them, Justin. They beat them by 20 points, and I think exposed a lot of flaws in the pack line defense. I think UVA is going to be great for a really long time as long as Tony Bennett's the coach there. But I do think now Coach K is looking at it going, oh, here's the blueprint that I can now show my freshman players how to beat UVA and attack the pack line defense. Was something in that game maybe exposed about UVA that could hurt them in the future?
You know, I think that's possible. I agree with you. I think Tony Bennett's one of the best coaches in the country.
Agree. Absolutely.
Obviously, he's done a fantastic job with that program, and this season really kind of came out of nowhere in a way. As I recall, they were picked to finish in the middle of the pack in the ACC preseason media poll, and to win the conference in the regular season, running roughshod over everyone with a 17-1 record, and then to win the conference tournament on top of that. Obviously, the UMBC thing is an incredible story, but it kind of is unfortunate for UVA and their fans in that the great season has gotten lost in the shuffle a little bit. Now, as for the possible vulnerability in the pack line, I think you're right. This season, despite only losing a handful of games, 3 to be exact, there were some cracks in the defense in that it was proven if you can make a lot of three-point shots, you can beat them.
Yeah.
And if you look at the 3 games, West Virginia, Virginia Tech, and UMBC, against West Virginia, they made 10 of 25, 40%. Virginia Tech made 11 of 29, and they really started off hotter than that leads you to believe in the first half. Yeah. And were able to build a bit of a lead. And then UMBC, they were the real killers with 12 of 24, a full half of their three-pointers went in. We know what UVA likes to do, and they do a very good job of cutting down action in the lane, but when it gets kicked out and you have capable shooters, they have shown that that's a weakness.
Is there any concern among UVA fans with Tony Bennett that, here we are again, another great season, but the second we get to the tournament, it's like a switch is flipped and it's just not the same team and we get knocked out early? I mean, are UVA fans, it's great to have a great program, but are they a little bit concerned that they keep getting knocked out of the tournament this early?
I mean, I'm sure that there is some of that, but and not to make excuses for this particular loss because it is obviously just nothing that anyone saw coming. But I really think you have to look at losing DeAndre Hunter before that happened and think about how much of an impact. He's just a terrific player and really one of their big X factors this year. I think he made them a much better offensive team in particular, and you saw those struggles in that game. And also you just saw the nature of the NCAA tournament. Sometimes when you get hit in the mouth, especially as a top seed, it can shock you. And they kind of started doing things that were not UVA-like. They were pressing on offense, taking shots that were kind of questionable. And eventually, like I said, they just got too many shots on the other end. So, it's understandable that people are concerned overall about the trend in the tournament. But I also think there's just some of this that's just kind of crazy. And it's just the way things go sometimes.
Yeah, hey Justin, this is Chris. How are you?
Hey, doing good. How are you?
Doing well. I agree with you about the whole, Virginia, and I think pretty much you could have called this going in that as soon as they got against a team that can score 70 points against them, which going into the season, looking through the season, there aren't many teams that could do that unless they get hot from shooting from three. But that UVA wasn't going to be able to keep up with them, and I think that it's just with this one and done, meaning one loss and you're out of the tournament, it's going to be hard for UVA with their current playing style to make deep runs. They've had trouble making 2 wins. How much do you agree with that?
Yeah, I mean, it'll be interesting to see if Tony Bennett and company go back to the drawing board at all. We also kind of forget that they just lost one of their top assistant coaches. Ron Sanchez headed out to take over Charlotte, I believe, is the program that he'll be heading. It'll be interesting to see if there's anything that they can do differently to handle a situation better like this, because obviously, as was alluded to earlier, this is kind of the blueprint. If you have shooters that are capable, you're going to try and do this. So whether it's extending their defense a little bit in some fashion or just mixing up what they do, it'll be interesting to see how they attack it going forward.
Let's shift over to Virginia Tech a little bit. Now, expectations, I don't really know what you want to call expectations for Virginia Tech this year. I think they kind of were exactly what we thought they would be going into the season, kind of a borderline tournament team. But to me, the most disappointing thing with Virginia Tech was not the loss to Alabama. I totally understand that. Alabama's got, a lottery pick on that team. But what I don't understand, though, Justin, is ACC tournament play. They play Notre Dame, and they get, they have this huge lead dominating the game, and Notre Dame is this crazy comeback. If you're a Virginia Tech fan, are you a little disappointed either in buzz in the players that comeback was allowed to happen? Because if Virginia Tech wins that game, they could potentially have been a 7 seed going into the tournament rather than an 8 seed and had a more favorable matchup.
Yeah, and as you grow as a program, I think that's where you really start to take steps forward. This is the second year in a row the Hokies were in the 8-9 game. This year they were the 8 instead of the 9, and drew a more favorable matchup certainly than Wisconsin last year.
Yeah.
That was just a tough draw for anybody. And Alabama was beatable, so I think that there's probably some frustration in that regard. But like you said, Colin Sexton's a terrific player, and that was quite a game up until the very end.
Yeah, and they didn't get blown out or anything.
No, I think that, like you said, this was right about at expectation level. To make the NCAA tournament in consecutive years, I believe I was 1 year old the last time that happened. It was, that's a several decade thing. That's pretty crazy, and I think, to get that kind of a monkey off the program's collective back is good, and definitely shows another step forward for Buzz and company. Yeah, that Notre Dame game, it's hard to really even put it into context. There was always a little bit of collapse and a little bit of
I've never seen one like that, though. That was incredible.
Comeback. No, I agree completely. I don't think I've ever seen anything quite like that, let alone in a tournament setting, which makes it all the crazier. But, I don't know. Those things do happen sometimes, but definitely I'm sure that didn't sit well with Buzz or anyone.
Now, looking to next year, they only lose one player off that roster. So, I mean, what are the expectations for the Hokies going into the 2018-19 campaign?
Yeah, I mean, it's always hard to predict at this time of year just because of the rate of attrition in college basketball in particular. And it'll be interesting to see if anything else happens with the roster. I don't know of anything particular that might happen, but you can never know. Losing Justin Bibbs obviously hurts quite a bit. He was probably Virginia Tech's most reliable shooter, averaging just over 13 points per game and one of the best three-point shooters in the program. And then Devin Wilson had a very big contribution down the stretch on defense, but you don't lose anything offensively there. One thing, there's a ton of talent, and honestly might be one of the more talented basketball teams in Virginia Tech history next season if everything comes together. But they need someone, I feel like, to step up and be a leader. Whether that's Justin Robinson, who I think is kind of the leader in terms of his play, or if it's one of the other guys, a lot of young talent, someone has to step up and be kind of the Seth Allen, Zach Leday guy from a couple of years ago. They could always be counted on to make a play when they had to, when they needed something in the clutch, and I think closing has been a bit of an issue for this program, even though they've had some great wins.
What in your opinion, Justin, does Virginia Tech and Buzz Williams as a program need to do to continue to move their basketball team forward?
That's a good question. I mean, building depth is always important, especially in the ACC. I feel like the really good teams can run deep, and Virginia Tech has been relying. I mean, this year they had to rely on a couple of true freshmen, Nikhil Alexander-Walker and Wabisa Bide. Rabidi, as he went down the stretch, got a lot of minutes that were key. Just building up that kind of talent level, and I think to the point where you can kind of have more interchangeable pieces. This year in particular, I think when Robinson was out and not running the point, you saw a very different basketball team in terms of how they executed. So having a little more consistency at that kind of position in particular, and then building depth this year, maybe with Kerry Blackshear and also Hadim C returning to the program, there might be a little more depth in the post. That's been a huge issue for the Hokies, being so thin. So just continuing to recruit well and get players at every position and get a little more balance, I think, is the key.
Let me dive a little deeper into what Chris is asking. Is Virginia Tech, you think of Virginia Tech, you think Beamer ball, you think football. Is Virginia Tech committed to succeeding in basketball to the point where they're looking at results now, they're looking at Buzz Williams, and now they got to start going, okay, we've got to invest in this program, give him the right resources to succeed if this program's going to win. I mean, the facilities, if you're basketball, are not anywhere close to some of these other ACC teams. At some point, what do they do to enable Buzz Williams to take this from borderline tournament team to really, really good basketball team?
Yeah, I think in terms of fan base, there's been a lot of excitement around the program, and that's been a key to making Castle Coliseum a more in line with some of the other difficult venues in the conference. certainly it needs a facelift at the very least. Not a lot has changed there since it was constructed, although they've done some things over the past couple of years, investing more. There's a nice practice facility next door along Washington Street, and Buzz Williams is well compensated in terms of looking at the other salaries of the top coaches in the conference, but also around the country. So I think that in and of itself shows a pretty significant commitment to, the football coach and the basketball coach at Virginia Tech are not normally paid the same kind of money. So that alone, I think, sends a good signal to people. But yeah, it's going to take, I think, another season like this one or even better with 3 consecutive NCAA tournament berths. That would be the first time in program history that's happened. So,
oh yeah. Well, next year's team should be better than this year's team.
Yeah, on paper, at the very least, it looks like it could be a great team to have another step forward. So, I think if they can have, like I said, another kind of run like that, that might be enough to get some more attractive recruits even and continue to push things forward as long as there continues to be an investment on the financial side as well.
All right, we were joined by Justin Cates from InsideTheACC.com. Do want to ask you about this. Look at Virginia Tech. Let's shift things over to football. They brought in Justin Fuente. I think he's done a fantastic job with Virginia Tech and where he has this program. But you looked at Tech last season, and Justin, the second they were met with legitimate physical competition, i.e. Clemson, Miami, they just completely fell short, and you could kind of tell within minutes of those games, they don't belong on the field with those teams. But I think some of that might be starting to change, because if you look at Virginia Tech and when they succeed, it's always when they have a good running back. Chiron Smith, Lee Suggs, Kevin Jones, Cedric Humes, Ryan Williams, and then David Wilson was really the last great Virginia Tech running back. Now they're bringing in this kid, and he hasn't signed yet, but they're going very hard after this running back, Devin Ford, who's that 4-star running back. He's rated the number 2 recruit in the state of Virginia. What can you tell us about this running back that could give Tech fans some hope that this could be the next great back to play for the Hokies?
Yeah, if you look at his film a little bit, it's pretty exciting to see a kid with his kind of ability. Obviously, getting recruits from within the Commonwealth are very important, both from a territorial perspective, but also for the importance of the program. They've been able to get a couple of those guys recently, but the last one being Devin Hunter, really. Devin Ford would be a huge get for the program. He's down to the Hokies and a couple of Big Ten programs, Penn State and Ohio State.
And Clemson's kind of in that mix too, aren't they?
Yeah, and he's got offers from all kinds of programs, quite a few. But he has some official visits set up here coming up in April as teams make their spring games. And Virginia Tech will get a visit for their spring game. April 14th is what is scheduled right now. So it'll be interesting. He'll also go to Penn State and Ohio State. And he sounds like he wants to make an announcement sooner rather than later just to get it out of the way, looking maybe sometime in mid-May. So it sounds like Hokie fans will know sooner rather than later if Devin Ford has a chance to be the next big back in orange and maroon. And like you said, they've kind of lacked that go-to guy for a while.
Yeah. And he reminds me, I was watching his recruiting tape earlier today. He reminds me a little bit of David Wilson, but a lot of Kevin Jones. I remember watching Kevin Jones, and it's like he could find holes in a defense that did not exist. And I'm watching that game. He kind of disappears into the defensive line and pops up out of it somewhere and then rushes for a touchdown. He's got that kind of explosive ability right through the middle. And I think that's going to be huge for Virginia Tech if they can get him. Yeah, and,
I think some people have kind of wondered if Coach Fuente would prefer to have no one dominant back. He likes to do it, but he's also said that he's willing to give someone the majority of the carries if they earn it. And it's one of those things, a kid is talented. If he can come in, he has a total shot. I think that in and of itself is very appealing to a young guy.
Yeah,
I think he fits well with the style offense. If Virginia Tech's going to spread him out and spread out some of the back end defense, this guy's a straightforward runner. He doesn't really make too many cuts or moves, but he's lightning quick, and he's just if he gets out past you, he's gone.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's the thing is that, they play a lot in the shotgun and some in a pistol formation too. So, when you're in a shotgun, you're starting 4 yards back as a running back. You've got to have that explosive ability, get the ball, and go with it right up the middle. I think this would be a huge recruit for Virginia Tech.
Yeah, and I think one thing that Coach Fuente has shown in his early tenure is that he just wants playmakers, and guys not necessarily have to be the biggest. Devin isn't huge. I think he's 5'11", like 185, give or take.
Oh, yeah, he's not big, yeah.
So, I don't think that's a problem for him. He's going to manage to get him in space, and certainly you have to be able to catch the ball, and you have to be able to pass block, and those are things that maybe take a little time, but, if you can do those things, yeah, it's going to be really exciting to see a full complement of Justin Fuente recruits running his offense.
Yeah, no, I'm definitely excited. It should be a great year for Virginia Tech football. Justin, you've been great. You can find more of his work at InsideTheACC.com. Go there to read all of your updates for the ACC. Justin, thank you for joining us.
Hey, thanks for having me, guys.
Yeah, absolutely. That was Justin Cates. Chris, what'd you think about that? He gives us a lot of perspective on UVA basketball, Tech basketball. What did you kind of think about what he said with UVA and maybe some of the dangers they're now getting into running the defense they like to run?
Yeah, I don't know that I 100% agree with that. Tony Bennett's still going to bring the heat when it comes defensively each year. Maybe as he gets new players, new recruits, there's going to be positional changes. I think what they're going to have to figure out is how he can get these teams scoring the ball with Tony Bennett. In UVA and scoring. So definitely needs some work on that end to be able to make the deeper runs in the tournament.
Well, and here's the other thing too that people are forgetting about this. Is the blueprint out there to beat UVA? I think so. But like Duke and UNC are going after these one and done recruits. It's not easy to teach a blueprint to freshmen, no matter how talented they are. You can be Marvin Bagley, you can be Zion Williamson, but forget the talent for a moment. That takes a long time to learn how a defense is going to react to your plays on an offense. So Coach K, Roy Williams, they could have the blueprint and still not be able to get over that hump of beating UVA on a consistent basis. So I don't think it's this thing of, now everybody's got the blueprint, UVA is going to fall off the map. But I do think it's interesting because I think some of these games that, UVA dominating the ACC to the point where 17-1 and the one loss is a close game at home where you played awful, I think those days are over. But I do think UVA is still going to be an incredibly exciting, fun, good team to watch.
I don't know about that. They're gonna be a good team, but probably really boring to watch.
Well, okay, boring, yeah. All right, listen, I want to thank everybody for joining us. Big thanks to Justin Cates. Don't forget, you can go see more of us at VirginiaSportsReport.com. I wrote an article about Longwood's new hire, and we want you to write articles. So, VirginiaSportsReport.com, click Submit an Article. You are given the chance to write your very own article. I'll edit it just to make sure there's no grammar mistakes. I'm not going to go in there and change what you're talking about it. We may comment on it. We may talk about it on the show. But go to VirginiaSportsReport.com, submit an article, write your own article. We would love to hear from you. You can also visit us on Facebook. And, by the way, this just hit. We are now available on iTunes. So go to the iTunes podcast app and look for Virginia Sports Report on there. Download us, subscribe to us so you can get all of our podcasts. We will be back live next week. This is Virginia Sports Report. Have a good night.